Turn up your volume. because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. And after 22 years, Raymond Mark!
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network. I'm Jimmy Murphy. That's Pierre McGuire. And we're going to get right into it, folks. We teed him up yesterday. Our good friend, a legend in the game of college hockey and pro hockey, Billy O'Flaherty, joining us here on the Eye Test on Campus Friday. Hey, Billy.
How you doing, guys? First of all, before we get started, let's 44 years in a day. A shout out to the great Herb Brooks.
Oh, yes.
USA Hockey for the Miracle on Ice.
Yeah, we spoke about that yesterday. Pierre had a great story, actually, about being with Herb with, was it with Bob McKenzie, right, Pierre?
Bob and Gord at the 2002 Winter Olympics at the airport in Salt Lake after it was over. And man, oh man, was he a passionate hockey person. I know Coach O'Flaherty knew him well, but he was obviously a tremendous legend in the hockey world.
Yes, he was, for sure.
Sure. So how are things, Billy?
Pretty good. Like a lot of 77-year-old people, got some ailments here and there, but we'll work through them.
The one thing that hasn't been affected, Jimmy, is his mind.
Yeah,
I'm telling you right now, if you want to talk hockey with somebody besides Scotty Bowman, I think Billy O'Flaherty is your guy. I'm just telling you right now.
All right, Billy, if you can slant a little to your, so that would be your left, I believe.
Yeah, go to your left, Coach. There you go.
A little more
to your left.
Okay.
We'll get it.
Gotcha. We want to see your handsome face, Coach.
We'll get it. We'll get it. There you go.
I got it.
Perfect.
There you go. Perfect.
So, Billy, for those that might not know you in our viewers section or our listeners section, why don't you tell them about how you got things going at Clarkson and just sort of your track throughout your career?
Well, I can thank first of all Lenny Sklarski, great hockey coach, two-time winner of the Spencer Penrose, brought me to Clarkson. I'm forever grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jerry York was my first hire. I was his first hire, and gave me every opportunity. We cut our teeth together, so to speak. He was 26 and I was 25. I like to say we have 1,300 wins together. He has about 1,150. But two great people that I'll be forever grateful to because of all the things that they did for me.
Yeah, it's great. So when you got to Clarkson, it's obviously a different college hockey world now than it was then. Just kind of give us some insight what it was like coming up the ranks there.
Well, I would say this. First of all, I played on our 1970 team at Clarkson, and we lost to the undefeated Cornell 6-4 at Lake Placid in the national finals. We lost to them 3-2 in the Eastern finals. And then we lost. Brian Cropper was in goal, and most people think it was Dryden. But I left for 2 years and came back as an assistant, and I was Jerry's first hire. And like I said, we cut our teeth together. And I think the first thing when that team in Lake Placid was a great team, but we only had one American-born player, and he was a spare goalie, second goalie, backup goalie. And one thing we did, we started to recruit a lot of Americans from New York State. We even had, when I was coach at Clarkson, we had 3 or 4 kids right from Potsdam, Kelly Morgan, Billy Norton, Tommy Taylor, and we scoured the North Country. We had several players from Northwood Prep who were Messina kids out of Messina High School. We had guys from Ogdensburg, New York, but we got a lot of good players out of New York State. And we set up I think the one thing we did from, say, about 72 to 86, we established a recruiting base. Before that, I don't know if you know this, Pierre probably does, but up until about 1972, schools could have as many scholarships as they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So there were, my class had 11, and then there was another class following that with 11. And in 72 was the very first year, I think, that the NCAA came in and you were allowed to give 23 scholarships.
Okay.
They quickly changed it within a year, the next year, down to 20. And 2 years later, it went to 18.
Okay.
So, we in the 60s and 70s, a lot of people like Lenny, the alum, would call up, say, hey, take this guy, take Pierre McGuire and take Jimmy Murphy. And automatically they'd show up on campus with, on his hockey scholarship. So those days were gone, because first thing I said to Jerry, we got to get out and scour the woods for these guys, because, you need players. Good players make good coaches. And, we just got, I said, hey, let's start looking at those midget lists from Ontario, Quebec, because somebody likes those players. They were drafted by somebody, one of the major A teams, and, we're going to find a nugget here and there, and then, it's going to be a base for us. And then, we're going to give more New York State kids a chance to play. And I'll never forget my first trip. An alumnus calls up, and it's in about September, first week in September, and there's a junior B game in Belleville. And the guy calls from Peterborough, as an alum, and says, want you to go and watch Jimmy Kingdon. And he wears number 15. They're playing in Belleville tonight, Peterborough Junior Bs. Okay. So I tell Jerry, well, I'm going down to that game tonight. It's about 2.5 hour drive from Potsdam. So I get in the car, drive down there. I'm at the game early. And Peterborough comes out for the warm-up. This guy tells me Jimmy Kingston's going to be number 15. And I'm looking and looking and looking. No 15.
I knew you were going to say that.
So I kind of learned a lesson the first year. If I'm only going to watch one player, call the coach or call the kid and find out if he's playing.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, I watched the game. And a guy with a cane and a dog could have found Ricky Mahar. I mean, he was very talented. And we get his older brother, Terry, was at BU at the time, but had kind of struggled in his first year. He was maybe the first crop of freshman eligibility. It was probably, I think it was 72 was the first year that it started, 72, 73. Anyways, so we get BU, since Terry had struggled a little, BU didn't know how good Ricky was. And so we got him committed. And he was going to come in the same class as Dave Taylor. And so what happens, I'm talking to Parker a couple of years back. He tells me the story. Well, I lost 2 kids in the summer. And we were talking about the gold medal there before. Right. I lost Alex Pierce to Notre Dame and another guy, I don't know his name, can't recall it, but he was from Montreal. And he got Ricky Mahar away from us. I'm going to say poached him. Parker won't like that word. But decommitted. Let's be nice to Parker. Anyways, and Mike Eruzione, who ends up getting the winning goal. And so who was committed to Merrimack. So Parker got his 2 guys in the summer to replace the 2 that he lost.
Jimmy, here's what I can tell you about the coach. He coached in one of the most iconic buildings in all of college hockey, Walker Arena, and it was legendary for this awful bell that if you were the visitors, you just didn't want to hear ring. You think the cannon shot in Columbus is bad?
That's what I was just going to ask, yeah.
You hear the bell at Walker Arena. But he also was responsible for helping build the magnificent building that's at Clarkson right now. Coach, tell us about how awesome Walker Arena was for the home team, not the visitors.
Well, Badger Bob called it the greatest home ice advantage in college hockey. But I would also say, we had an awful lot of good teams, and we won a lot of road games as well. But I would grant him the fact that Walker was tough to play. And, we had a lot of big kids, a lot of kids that worked hard and good players. And we were tough to beat at home. But like I said, we won a lot of games on the road, too.
Yeah, you did. But some of those big players, like they had Dave Taylor, they had Colin Patterson, they had Craig Laughlin. Coach talked about the players from New York State.
Yeah.
The Armstrong brothers from Messina. They only missed on one. They didn't get Steve. He decided to go to Northwood and then go to Harvard. So I can't believe you didn't get him. You had the inside knowledge.
Well, they were mad. But we only gave Bobby, I think, a 3 for 4. But the Armstrong brothers were all good players, no question.
They were really good.
Coach, I'm listening to you talk about going on that scouting trip. And I mean, scouting today must seem like, wow, these guys have it easy, considering all the driving you must have done back in the day, eh?
Well, I enjoyed it. When you're doing something you really like, it's not really like work. And every year I spent in hockey, and I loved it. It was just, my dad was a hockey coach. My brother played in the NHL. My older brother played on Etobicoke Indians and went to the All-Ontario Junior B finals with Dryden in the net. And so, hockey was just part of my life, and, a great part of it. I spent 30 years at Clarkson in one capacity or another, and enjoyed it all. And, one day Dave Taylor called me up and said, geez, I want you to come to work for me. So I was unique in that I was Jerry York's first hire, and I was Dave Taylor's first hire.
Nice.
Now, neither one of them ever said I was the best hire.
Well, Coach, they haven't told you, but I was at Coach York's Hall of Fame induction, and he whispered a few nice things about you in my ear. And every time I see Dave Taylor, we always talk about you. So they think very kindly and heartily of you. But Jimmy, I got to tell you this. Coach recruited a player that never played in the NHL, but I'm telling you right now, he would have played in this NHL. His name's Dave Fretz. Coach, can you talk about the greatness of Dave Fretz as a college defenseman, and how if the red line would have been out, he probably would have been a superior NHL player?
Well, probably as good a skater as I've seen. He could, you could have made films of his skating alone, but he was very solid and a smart kid. Engineering, he missed like Dave King kept him on the Canadian Olympic team till right at the last minute, and then he let him go. And Fretz missed the first 2 or 3 weeks of school one year, and he was in I think chemical or mechanical engineering, and he came back, never missed a beat. He was very bright and hardworking, just a really, really good college player. Great.
Really
and
was.
a little that I think they held it against him, a little bit on the smaller side for the pros in those days.
Yep.
Right. Coach, I'm wondering, that's a great point by Pierre that he probably would have made it with the red line out. I'm wondering, as you got towards that period when they finally did that, and you're scouting college, do you see more players starting to transition into that style, whether it was scouting in the pros or scouting college?
I don't know. I think the rules over the years have helped the smaller skilled guys in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And, there's more teams now too. There's more, chance. My younger brother, Jerry, for instance, he was picked in 1970 draft 36th. He was the last kid in the 3rd round. He's hoping that they expand by four more teams, and then he'll call himself a first rounder.
I think he was drafted by Toronto, wasn't he, Coach?
Yes, he was.
I think he was
Hey, the worst thing, Pierre, is he's got 5 Stanley Cup rings, and I've got none.
Coach, you want me to let you borrow one of mine?
Yes, because, well, as I've said, I used to say he was I was the smart one, he was the rich one. But after he won his 4th, I said he's both. He's the rich one and the smart one.
Yeah, it's awesome. Jimmy, I wanted to ask the coach this because I think it's really important that having Coach O'Flaherty on is awesome. I'm so excited to have you on, Bill. You talked about the New York State influence, and you talked about how you try to refine your recruiting. Have you seen hockey since you started at Clarkson in the late 60s? Have you seen hockey grow in the proper direction in the United States?
Oh, I think so. And I think a lot of it, especially in the Mass area where you spend a lot of time, and Murph has, Bobby Orr, I think, set, that whole Bruins thing in the Stanley Cups there with Espo, Cashman, Ace Bailey, who I love. That was, I think, really started the development of a lot of Mass high school and prep schools. And, a lot of those kids today go out to the USHL, and prep schools are struggling to get those kind of kids. They all go into the USHL.
You're right.
But, funny story about Ace was, he played on the junior Edmonton Oil Kings, and they came in '66. They won the Memorial Cup versus Bobby Orr-led Oshawa junior team. They were both Bruin farm teams.
Wow.
And the West, for whatever reason, got to pick up 2 or 3 players, I think, who weren't on the team. And there was so much interest in it. And one of the guys they had was Alan Hamilton, I think, who was a Ranger draft.
His numbers retired in Edmonton now.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it was like they moved the series. There was so much interest in it. They moved the series out of Oshawa and put it in Maple Leaf Gardens. And the headlines like on the Toronto Star Sports would be best in the West, Alan Hamilton, against best in the East, and Bobby Orr.
Wow.
And so the first game starts, and it gets about 3 minutes into the game, and Orr picks it up behind his net, and in vintage Rex Steimer, over the blue, the red, the blue, and snaps it up in the top corner, 1-0.
Wow.
Ace turns and shoves Alan Hamilton, said, "He's way better than you are."
That's definitely Ace. That
is Ace.
He was the greatest.
He was fun. I can tell you what, we had some very interesting evenings out on the road, whether it was on the prairie or in NHL cities. We had some fun nights together.
Other than losing my parents and one of my younger brothers, the saddest day of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
My daughter got married on Lake Placid on September 9th, and 2 days later they were gone.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I used to, when I got out of college, guys.
And Ace actually came with Bruce Boudreau.
Oh, wow. That's phenomenal.
Yeah. Bruce didn't go on the flight. Yeah. Ace was there. He was scouting a lot when I was working with the Islanders out of college, guys. And he would just take the like the people that check in, the media and all that, and the scouts. That's what I was doing for the Islanders then. And he would take us out for drinks after, and we would just be in stitches the whole night. I mean, it was just like the story, jokes.
Like a magnet, wasn't he? People just gravitated to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky's first roommate, right?
That's correct.
He said he had people ought to check their memorabilia because he had Gretzky's signature down to a science.
I think you're right, Coach. You're right. Billy, I got to ask you, you've been involved in a lot of rivalry games, and I've coached in the rivalry. I know how bad it is. Clarkson St. Lawrence is never friendly. You guys call it that other school down the road. I know how you talk about them. How intense Clarkson St. Lawrence in your eyes over the years?
Well, you're right. The two schools close together. I think Clarkson's, I think overall maybe a little more committed. Would you say that's a fair analyze the situation? But,
yes,
it's one of those things. It's a war every time we play, and I don't think it matters all that much who's the better team because both teams, college hockey is such an emotional sport. It's not always the talented team that wins. It's the team that plays the hardest and wants it the most, and and goalies matter. Whatever team has a hot goalie or the better goalie, it's going to make a difference. I remember Jack Parker telling me that he had a friend of his who had never gone to a hockey game. He said, "Well, hey, come on over, watch us play on the weekend." So his friend goes over and he comes back on Monday, and Jack said, "Well, what did you think of the game?" He says, "Well, why do they call it hockey? They should call it goalie."
It's true. No, it's true. He's 100% right. I agree.
I wanted to, Pierre, were you going to say?
No, I'm listening.
So, Billy, I wanted to, Pierre was mentioning about just the growth of hockey in the USA and what it's been like to see, but if getting more specific to where you were and how you played a role in it, what has it been like for you to see the amount of NHL players from upstate New York and that whole area make it to the NHL and really have amazing careers?
Well, I think in the old days too, to be fair, I think first of all, my brother played major junior and went to, played 8 years in the NHL. So I think it's horses for courses. Some guys don't love school. They don't want to go to school. They just want to be players.
Right.
College to me gave an opportunity to be both. And, the world is tough and it's nice to have a college degree to fall back on.
Yep.
But I think that most of the people involved, and Pierre would, I think, agree with me, they owed a lot to the system.
Mhm.
For instance, if you were a coach, if you hadn't played in the NHL, you had to prove that you could coach. An
Mhm.
NHL player starting out, he's given the benefit of the doubt. He has to prove that he can't coach. And I think Pierre would agree with that. And I
100%.
think that people are loyal to the system that helped them get ahead. And that's just the way life is. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. It's just reality.
Right.
I agree. Hey, coach, you coached against him forever. I was a young guy coaching against him as an assistant coach. But Billy Cleary, Jimmy, the former
right.
head coach at Harvard, is considered one of the best American-born players ever.
Yeah.
He never got a sniff in the NHL. And I guarantee you, Coach O'Flaherty and Coach Cleary had some pretty major drag-out fights as coaches. Would that be true, Coach?
Oh yeah, Billy's. Hey, and he had a good gig. He had that insurance. He had the insurance business going when he was at Harvard.
They still have it going. That's where I got my health care from, the Clearys.
Okay, but I got a lot of respect for Billy. I mean, hey, you can't take it away from me. He won a lot of hockey games, and he was a smart hockey man. And he, before the miracle, that team in Squaw Valley he was a big part of it.
Yeah, 1960, 100%. Coached by our good friend Brett Riley's grandfather.
Oh, that's right.
Brett
You
Riley.
just had on.
Everything ties up, and that's why we call the show the Eye Test, Coach O'Flaherty, because you're a guy that recruited players not on numbers, but on the eye test, isn't it? Didn't you?
Well, I think that's where one of the things we both agree on. If Gary Bettman had his way, you wouldn't even have any scouts.
Yeah.
He's always looking to save money for the owners, and they'd be doing it all by video.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm with Pierre. I think that you can't measure the size of the heart and the will and the want. And, it's just interesting the way hockey evolves. And, it's even changed now. Like 2 years ago, the Avs won it with a very offensive group of defensemen. They had Taves, I think. They had
McGuire.
Gerard, the small guy. They had McGuire, probably the best defenseman since Bobby Orr. And then Vegas comes along, and they have, Big Seb Peterangelo there had a lot of offense, but they weren't an offensive defensive type of team. So there's different. Takes a lot of eggs to make the cake.
Yeah.
You just. I don't know if there's a secret formula. The only formula that I know is have good special teams and are really good. If your goalie plays better than their goalie and your special teams are better, you got a chance to win a lot of games.
Yeah, but you need boots on the ground. Yes, I'm with you. I mean, you need boots on the. I was worried coming out of COVID how that would really hurt the scouting industry, so to speak, and whether there be cutbacks. And like in the last year, you're seeing way more scouts again in the press box, which I love because they're the best guys to talk. They're the bloodline in my eyes.
Jimmy, one of those scouts you're talking about, I think, is one of Coach O'Flaherty's best players ever, Dave Taylor. And the recruitment of Dave Taylor is an amazing story. Coach York has shared it with me many times. But, Coach, why don't you talk about the recruitment of Dave Taylor and how good a player he really was when most people thought he would never play?
Well, first of all, the two gentlemen that you mentioned, it's probably one of the biggest or greatest feelings in my whole life is that I was their first hire, both of them. But like I said, neither one said I was the best one.
Yep.
But we recruited Dave. I went up and watched him, I think, first. And I said, Dave, I came back and I told Jerry, I said, Jerry, I think he's going to be really good, but I don't know about next year. He weighs 142 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? He came in and by Christmas time, he was our best player. He got better every day. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. How he just improved by leaps and bounds every day. And, and he overcame some adversities here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But Jerry, I owe Jerry and Dave so much because they did so many things for me. But they took a chance on me, and I hope that. And I wanted to work as hard as I could when I got in a chance to prove it. But, talk about great people. It took Dave 42 years to win his cup. And he, finally got it in 2019 with the Blues. Didn't look good after they lost that 6th game in St. Louis, but came back and, I would have bet a lot of money, I think, on Boston in that 7th game.
Well, especially after the first period, Jordan Binnington, if it's not for him, they get smoked in Game 7.
And it's funny, they were in rock bottom in January.
Yeah.
They were out of the playoffs.
Yeah, rock bottom. But two great people,
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, Dave Taylor to me is the ultimate enigma because nobody could figure out how good he was because he wasn't a pretty skater. Coach could speak to that. But he was such a hard player.
He had a few things. He was extremely intelligent.
Yep.
He saw the ice so good, great passer, but he had the will and the want. I mean, he's like a dog on a bone. He's not, didn't matter. He just had that work ethic, and he just got better and better, stronger and stronger. And, his senior year, if you said to me, and I'm glad I'm talking to Pierre, and you guys know a fair amount of, as much as I do about college hockey, but I was thinking the other day, and Pierre, you were at the BC UMass game last Sunday, and Jerry York was there, and Mel Donnelly was there.
Oh, wow.
Mike Donnelly. Okay. Who I had the privilege of working with when I was with the Kings. Anyways, I was thinking, Mike Donnelly was a walk-on at Michigan State.
He was.
He goes on to have a very nice pro career with the Kings. He got 59 goals his senior year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dave Taylor got 108 points his senior year. And Paul Correa got 100 points his freshman year. Now, I don't know. Is there any way that if somebody out there is listening that it had better years than those 3 years in college hockey than those three guys?
No,
I don't think so.
No.
And so Mike Donnelly, this is a good one. I was a Pittsburgh Pirate fan, and they had a guy in 19. Dick Stewart. Okay, played for the Pirates in the late 60s, and he hit 66 home runs in Lincoln, Nebraska. And he used to sign his name Dick Stewart 66. So I always wanted Donnelly to sign his name Mike Donnelly 59.
There you go.
Because of the 59 goals.
Sidney Crosby has 87 for a reason. He's born August 7th. 8-7.
Wow.
But that's that. When you told me you were at that UMass, or I heard you say it on the eye test.
Yeah.
You were at that game on. So.
Yeah. Well, that's so. You talk about Paul Correa. I remember watching him his freshman year. I was coaching in Hartford. I was working with Brian Burke. We were playing the Bruins on a Saturday night in Boston. And so Brian and I and Paul Holmgren went that afternoon to watch Paul Correa. Maine was playing at BC. And you could tell, he was vastly superior to any of the other players on the ice in that game. It wasn't even close. But if you think about it, one of the greatest orchestrations of the draft in terms of maneuvering, Brian did it. Brian Burke did it that draft in Quebec City, traded from 5th to 2nd to get Chris Pronger.
That's right.
So that's not a knock on Paul Correa or Jason Arnott.
Well, how about the job he did getting the Sedin twins 1 and 2?
That was because other guys in the league didn't know what they were doing.
I know.
That was embarrassing. The 99 draft's the worst. The 99 draft's the worst draft in NHL history, and Burke got 2 Hall of Famers. You can't make this stuff up.
That's unreal.
Correa went 3rd, didn't he?
He went 4th, I believe.
Okay.
I think Niedermeyer was 3rd.
Okay.
You might be right and I might be wrong, but I know it was Niedermeyer, Arnott, Correa.
I'll pull it up right now, guys.
That was a group.
Hey, but 100 points as a freshman is.
Oh, it was unbelievable to see how good he was. It was amazing.
Jerry and I used to, as you know, would talk a lot. We thought if a kid in his freshman year got 10 goals, he had a heck of a season.
Oh, unbelievable year.
Yeah.
Hey, Brady Tkachuk had 8 goals his freshman year at BU. He ended up being 4th in his draft year.
Yeah.
He had 8 goals his freshman year. Then he scored 23 in the NHL the next year.
I know. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is.
So, guys, that draft, too, I just pulled it up here. It went Daig, Pronger, Grattan, Correa, and Niedermeyer in the top 5. Rob Niedermeyer, that is.
Yeah, Niedermeyer. So, Grattan's a forgotten guy. Tampa took him at 3.
Yeah. Speaking of
And he
Dave,
ended up playing in Buffalo, didn't he?
yeah. Speaking of Dave, guys, I guess Netflix just did a documentary on him, and what a, to be blunt, what a bust.
That was the Senators' pick, wasn't it?
It was a Senators pick, but you know what? I will say this about Alex. I think if he
Seems
would
like
have
a great guy.
if he would have been drafted,
Was that Paul Castron picking him, Pierre?
No, now be nice. You're picking on a guy from Sudbury who's a North Country guy now, and oh my gosh, Paul.
Oh, I love Kaz.
I know you do. I know you're joking. That was you know who the late John Ferguson Sr. was involved with that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, my brother scouted for Winnipeg. There's another good story. I told you this the other day. Well, Potsdam is a small place, but you know what? They've got 4 NHL general managers. Mike Smith,
Yep.
either born in Potsdam or went to Clarkson. Mike Smith, who had the Leafs, the Blackhawks, and Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Taylor with the Kings. Jarmo Kekalainen with Columbus.
Oh,
and
wow.
Craig Conroy now with the
Yeah.
Jarmo. I was telling him the Jarmo story the other day. My brother calls me up. He's scouting for Winnipeg. And says, and this is 1986.
Uh-huh.
And he says, Billy, my next door neighbor is a guy named Bobby Barnes. And he works for Torsbo Sticks. He says he's got a kid from Finland who wants to come over. So I said, Cap Rader was our coach at the time. I said, Cap, I think I got a player for you. We had not taken very many kids sight unseen, but we were going to take this one. So I said to my brother, well, how good is he? And John says, well, I was just at the World Junior at Cops Coliseum, and I saw the Finnish team play.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't remember Kekalainen, but if he can make that team, he can play for you guys. So we get Jarmo, and first week he comes over. I see him in the parking lot outside of Alumni Gym,
Mm-hmm.
and he speaks fluent English.
Yes.
He's got the Wall Street Journal in his back pocket. This is not an ordinary college kid.
Yeah.
and doesn't he become the first European GM
Yep.
to be a coach and GM in the NHL?
And you know what else, Jimmy? His brother ended up going, Yanni, his brother ended up going to Clarkson and playing there as well.
Wow.
Jimmy, I want to tell you, because Coach thinks he's got this going on over me, but research matters, okay? He had a lady that worked in his office at Clarkson whose son was a very good hockey player, but he went to Northwood. He left Potsdam to go to Northwood.
Okay.
So he ended up going to Clarkson as a player. He thought that St. Lawrence never recruited the guy. We actually did recruit the guy, but he had this built-in internal mechanism called the mother. The mother worked for Coach O'Flaherty. It's Craig Conroy's mom. So don't tell me that you got that player and we didn't know who he was. His mother worked for you, for goodness sakes. Come on.
Well, there's some interesting stories there too with Randy Sexton recruited me to work for Florida.
Uh-huh.
And when I had recruited Randy really hard, and I lose him to St. Lawrence. And, he, one of the few kids who I really, really want. I mean, he was tough, hard-nosed,
really tough,
mean, you name it. He was all of the above.
He was.
And I coached the JVs, and, I would go over and tell the rep before the first year or so, say, that kid ought to get a penalty every play. Every play, he ought to get a penalty. With him was Randy Sexton. And so then, as Pierre knows, his son, Ben, there was a recruiting battle between Clarkson and St. Lawrence. And so George Rowe calls me up and says, geez, you think you could help us with Ben Sexton? I said, well, I'll call Randy. I says, Randy, because Randy has had a little Clarkson in him too, because he got his MBA at Clarkson.
MBA there, exactly.
He got his MBA. So I said to him, Randy, no good father would let his son make the same mistake he did. And Clarkson got him.
They did.
And he's a good player. He got hurt a lot.
Anyone listening or watching, here's your tricks of the trades to recruiting.
You know what, though? Randy has so much respect for Coach O'Flaherty. He talked about hiring him down in Florida. And Randy's just one of my best friends in hockey. I can't say enough good things about him. But Coach talks about how tough he was. He was nasty, man.
He was a bulldog.
He was a nasty guy on the ice.
Yeah.
Coach, who were you working with when I met you when Kevin Stevens introduced us way back?
I think it was Pittsburgh, I think.
Were you with Pittsburgh? Okay.
Yeah, 1 year in Pittsburgh. Yeah, and then Randy got me, and
Okay.
I loved it in Pittsburgh too. Ray Shero treated me great. They never
Another
let me
St.
forget
Lawrence
that,
guy, Jimmy. Another St. Lawrence guy sleeping with the enemy.
Hey, they never let me forget it either.
I love it. I love it.
Oh man,
That was right. Was that the beginning of Shero's tenure there when he first started?
He had been there. I think he had been there 2 or 3 years, maybe.
Okay.
But they were not. That's a good question. No, I think there were a lot of changes there at that time.
I remember that.
And
That's
they were tired of losing. I know that.
Yep.
You know, they were
turning around with Sid.
the year that I was there. They had like a 44-point game or a gain in the standings, and that was probably at the time I think the second or third biggest. It was Malkin's first year.
yep.
Okay.
And we lost out to Ottawa. We give them a heck of a fight. Ottawa had some great teams. Those early 2000 teams.
All those guys.
They, Alfredson and Jacques Martin was the coach in there at the time.
Mhm.
They had some really good teams.
Yeah.
That Alfredson was a heck of a player.
Oh yeah.
He really was. That was a John Ferguson senior too. There were two guys that John stole: Pavel Dimitra, the late Pavel Dimitra.
Oh, he's
and Daniel Alfredson. That was all
the last
Fergie.
player taken in the draft, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a late round pick, and the reason why he went late, he hurt his ankle playing tennis, and he slipped in the draft, and people forgot he was even playing. He didn't play his draft year, but Fergie had unbelievable notes on him. It was Fergie that drafted him. Yeah.
Oh, he had a ton of talent, didn't he?
Oh, so much talent. We had his agent on the other day, Coach Matt Cater, and he said, without a doubt, of all his clients, like this guy represents Zdeno Chara, he represents Adam Fox, you Blake Wheeler. He's got a murderer's row of players. He said, without a doubt, the most talented guy he ever represented was Pavel Dimitra.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Clarkson's had some goalie issues this year, and Matt Cater delivered Fowler over to BC. So I thought I'd throw that in there.
And our Montreal listeners and viewers are very excited about him. Let me tell you.
That's good.
Good stuff, Coach. Good stuff.
Oh, darn. Well, we're going to let the coach go, Jimmy.
Yeah, we'll let him go. But
not because we want to, but we've got to answer a bunch of questions here today, Coach.
Okay. Thanks very much for having me.
Oh, are you kidding me? This has been awesome. We can't thank you enough.
Yeah.
I'll go look at your property tomorrow when I'm over in Potsdam, okay? I'll go look at the building that you built.
Have a good evening. Don't forget to go to the buffet.
I won't forget tomorrow night, Coach. I promise. I'll go. I promise. See you later.
Have a good one. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Coach Billy O'Flaherty joining us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network.
Jimmy.
Oh, man. It's great.
Jimmy.
Just reminds me a lot of Scotty.
Oh, my
Pierre.
gosh. And he is. He's just 12 years younger. But I'm just telling you, this is a special hockey man. I remember would have been 88, the spring of 88. I was offered 6 different college jobs, and one of them was at Clarkson. And I went and spoke to Coach O'Flaherty and to Mark Morris, who was taking over as the coach. And the first thing I thought of was like, everything I thought about this guy is wrong. He's unbelievably personable. He's really smart. He's passionate beyond belief. He really understands players. He blew me away when I did the interview with him. And then I obviously got offered the job, and I didn't take it. I went to St. Lawrence just because of my relationship with Joe Marsh. But I would tell you, of all the different job opportunities I've had over the years, he was the one that when I did the interview with him, he blew me away. I was like, whoa, this guy's really good. He's an awesome human. He really is.
He's great. I remember those days when he was at Pittsburgh there, and just talking with him and Stevens a lot in the press box. And he was great. He was just telling. That was right when I was starting off, Pierre, and he'd always be encouraging, keep pushing, kid. You know what you're doing, keep pushing. Yeah. And I remember when I got on Nesson, the first time I was ever on Nesson, he reached out to me. He said, "Was that your ugly mug on Nesson that I saw?"
Yeah, missed you. So I'll tell you, we talked a lot of times about mentorship on this show.
Yes.
Because it's really important.
It is.
Well,
in anything.
So he mentored. You look at all the guys that are coaching in college hockey, like that we think are really good coaches. Terry Mahar had an unbelievable career as a coach, mentored by Billy O'Flaherty. You look at the guys, all the guys that worked with Jerry York, Greg Brown, Mike Cavanaugh. You go look at them all, mentored by our guy, Coach O'Flaherty. It's amazing. His fingerprints are on so many different programs, Jimmy. It really is truly amazing. And that's the part, I guess, when I proposed that we had him on, that's the part that doesn't get the payback, and it deserves it. And that's why, if I have anything to say about it, I'm always going to acknowledge those guys that helped all these young coaches get better. Because this is where I think there's one problem in coaching today, in the NHL and in college in particular. I can't speak to the major junior because it's a different animal. And that is, the great mentors are all getting old, and they haven't been able to touch these young guys coming up now.
Yeah.
And I think that's hurt coaching. I do.
I'd agree.
I think it has. You know, guys go to these coaching symposiums, and that's great, but they're really impersonal. They really are. They're not. When you're mentored by somebody, it's a personal relationship, and people are invested in it. Like, I talk to Coach via text almost every day. I talk to Terry Mahar probably once every 2 weeks. You know, I coached against Terry a lot, but even though we had an acrimonious his team versus our team, we still talked all the time. There was mentorship there. And I think that's the forgotten part of our business. I think I shared this with you, and I hate, sorry to be long-winded, but I'm passionate about this. I remember coaching Hartford. I was really young. I had just been, I think, 31, I think I was.
Yeah.
And the equipment manager for the Islanders would always come down to our room when we would play New York.
You did. I remember this.
And he would say, Coach Arbor would like to see him. At the first time, what did I say? What did I do? He's going to rip me apart. And I'd sit in his office and he'd say, "You want a cigarette? Want a coffee?" You know, and I'd be like, "Well, I don't smoke, but I'll drink the coffee." And we wouldn't even talk about hockey. We talk about life. Like, how's your family? You got any kids? What was your relationship like with Scotty Bowman? Like, all these different things. You think guys do that today?
No.
Not a chance.
They don't make
Not a
time.
chance. And I think that I learned so much from Al. I obviously learned so much from Bob Johnson, and I couldn't learn any more than I did from Scotty Bowman. I spoke to Scotty today before we came on the show. We were, you know, and he was mad because he couldn't get on a golf course he wanted to get on. So I said, "Why do you call the Tampa Bay Lightning?" He goes, "I don't want to get them involved." I'm like, and one of the reasons why we were talking is the man that ended Scotty's career as a player, Jean-Guy Talbot, passed away today.
Yeah.
And Jean-Guy actually hit Scotty over the head in a junior game with his stick.
Wow.
And that ended Scotty's career as a player.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's right. And so everybody thought Scotty was always mad at Jean-Guy. It's a great story. And I'm just rolling into it because it's from the call today. Jean-Guy Talbot, Scotty picked him up when they needed depth on defense in St. Louis. This is the guy that ended his career. But Scotty told me the last 5 or 6 years, as Jean-Guy got older and Scotty got older, Jean-Guy would send a note to Scotty, or Jean-Guy's wife would send a note to Scotty and call. Can you imagine?
Check on,
But this is what I'm talking about. That's the stuff that used to happen. There was respect. Even though there might have been animosity, there was respect.
Yeah.
I don't know if that happens anymore, Jimmy. I don't know. And that's why these legends like Billy O'Flaherty and Jerry York and Jack Parker, I want those guys on. Like, I want to show people. I want to show how great these men are.
Yeah.
How great these men. They're really great men. They're amazing men.
I totally agree, Pierre. And I mean, I agree with you that, you know, we need more mentors. I'm wondering, Pierre, as you're saying this, and it wouldn't be able to be obviously on a full-time basis, but wouldn't it be a bright idea if, you know, whether it's an NHL team, an NCAA team, if they, let's call them mentoring consultants per se, hire somebody in that position, like a Billy O'Flaherty, right, to come in on a once or twice a month basis, just to let people pick their brains, and then relationships can form from that. And, you know, guys like Billy or other mentors out there, they'll give them their number and say, "Call me when you need me." And that, just to have those avenues for young players and young coaches right now would be tremendous.
I totally agree. So I will tell you, let the cat out of the bag. In some of my interviews for general managers positions, they would ask me, "How would your staff look?" And I say, one of the things at the end, I tell them different names of people I'd like to hire. And then at the end, I say, one of the things I think is missing in the NHL today is veteran life presence, guys that can teach you about life in hockey. So I was thinking, here's Kenny Martin, 707 wins at Belmont Hill, the winningest at that time, the winningest coach all time in prep school hockey. He's just been passed by John Gardner at Avon Old Farms. He's been a longtime Latin teacher, an unbelievable guy, an amazing human being. He would be an amazing life coach with an NHL team. Joe Marsh, who I ran with so many miles, and we visited today at the practice at Appleton Arena, and Joe Marsh would be an amazing guy. I know Randy Sexton and Ray Sherrill both talked about hiring Joe Marsh. He was another guy. Billy O'Flaherty and Ray and Randy both hired him. You know, I can go down the line. You're so spot on. And
by the way, we don't rehearse this, just so everybody knows.
We never rehearse this. So
coincidence.
My whole thing, Jimmy, is I do think there's a vehicle for that. And these are guys that don't have to break the bank. They've already made their money.
Yeah,
they want to stay relevant in the game, and they want to pass on knowledge and help people.
Yep.
You know, one of the great things I ever experienced was being with Badger Bob. And whether it was on a charter aircraft in the playoffs or visiting with him when he was ill at the hospital. And the life lessons that I learned from him. And Scott, can you imagine? My first years in the league, I had Bob Johnson, Craig Patrick, and Scotty Bowman. Like, think about that.
Yeah.
Those are amazing mentors, life lessons.
You were blessed.
And so every year that's gone by, and now we're over 35, almost 35. Right. I think about that. And I'm saying I'm watching all these different teams and guys with really good careers, guys with not so good careers, and guys that could have great careers, but they're still not aware.
Yeah. I
just think there's a vehicle for it, Jimmy.
And
we don't rehearse the show, but I'm really proud of you for saying what you said, because you're right on.
I mean, no, Pierre. I mean, I've told you a million times how much Russ Conway meant to me.
Yeah.
If I didn't have him, I don't know where I'd be. You know, people like him, like you, you know, everyone needs that in every field. So I just think, they're missing out on it. I will say, as we're talking here, I want to give credit. Out of any team in the NHL, really the only one that I've seen make a concerted effort, and you know this, Pierre, is the Canadians. They do that.
Well, I think the history is so strong there. You know, I remember when Guy was around the team a lot. I remember when Mario Tremblay was around a lot. I remember, obviously, our good friend Chris Nyland, who's there now, doing so. I think Chris makes a big difference because he can attack it from so many different things in his life. So you're right. I think the Rangers did it pretty well for a long time, especially when they had Ross Pierre around. You know, I think they're starting to do it. I think the Bruins are starting to do it more. But you know, it's the O'Flahertys, it's the Bowmans, it's the Parkers, it's the Yorks, it's the Martins, it's those guys that really they transcend so many errors.
They do.
And, like, I don't know how many people think about this, but think about Scotty Bowman's mentors: Toe Blake, Frank Selke Sr., Sam Pollock. Like, those are the three greatest builders in the history of the game.
Yeah.
That's who he learned from.
And then
he comes and he passes on that knowledge to other people.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's Barry Smith or whether it's Dave Lewis or whether it's Roger Nielsen or whether it's Pierre McGuire or whomever.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So all that stuff gets passed on. And I think we're losing that generation because they've kind of been pushed to the side.
Yep.
And it's not right.
No.
I'm just telling you, it's not right. Like, if I had a team now, how could you not have Scotty Bowman working for you or Billy O'Flaherty? How could you not do that?
Yep. I know. It's just, it makes too much sense. That's why it's not done, Pierre. Because nothing makes sense these days.
Sorry for being so passionate about that.
No, it's all right. And, you know, Pierre, quickly before we move to the questions, and I know we got to go quick, but I know we'll talk about it maybe Monday. It's funny this topic comes up. I was so disturbed by that report about Mark Bergevin last week and the alumni. I don't know enough about it. We don't have to comment on it now. But I'm just thinking, if that's the case, what was he thinking? Because we're saying right now, that's why you need those guys around. It's not just for show. It's to help the current roster, to help the current staff.
One of Scotty Bowman's greatest lines to me was, Pierre, even a fish wouldn't get caught if he kept his mouth shut. So I'm not going to talk about that.
All right. I understand. Noted. But I just I just thought it was funny as it had happened. Let's go to these questions. All right, Randy Workman. Jimmy, if you're asking questions, can you ask Pierre? Well, you can ask him right now, Randy. How much does the GM include coaches about the players to acquire?
Depends on how comfortable the coach is or the general manager is with the coach.
Mm-hmm.
And if he thinks he's a long-term solution at coach or a short-term. If he thinks he's a short-term, probably doesn't talk to him very much. If he thinks he's a long-term, he trusts him and he talks to him. A lot of that comes down to internal relationships. Sometimes these managers get a coach hoisted on them by the owner.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then the
previous team.
manager's not that comfortable, you know?
Yeah.
So it depends on the relationship, but I'd say in this NHL, maybe a little bit more. Back in the day when I was doing it, nah.
Let me ask you, Pierre, too, in terms of would it happen more with a team that's in a rebuilding mode, per se, the Montreal Canadiens, because they're trying to get everybody on the ground floor, get everybody on the same page going forward?
Yeah, I'd say yes. The answer is yes. And I've seen those guys behind the scenes. I'm talking about the coaches and the management and the ownership, even with Jeff Molson. They are really unified. There's really no lack of unity there. So I think that's a great point, Jimmy, that you're raising. Yep.
Good stuff. All right, let's go to the next question. Evan McLaren, 1,000% agree with Pierre that the Penguins have a traceable asset in their goaltenders, either Ned or Jerry, but where would that leave them? How ready is Bloomquist to begin work in the NHL? That's a good question.
It's a really good question. It's not a fast answer either.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's one of those where I don't think NHL starting ready. Does that
maybe back up?
Yeah, I'd say like a B situation, not an A situation right now.
One thing I would say that could help them, though, Evan, and this maybe answer the question too, is if they do decide to go through with one of those trades, there's goalies coming up on the free agent market. There's going to be goalies available, mid-grade starters that you don't have to throw too much money at, that they could bring in as they start to build.
Yeah, that's really better said by Jimmy than by me. I like that. That's good.
No.
That's good. That's good.
All right, next question. Justin LeBron, what do you think of the Bruins Flames overtime? That was awesome.
It was really good.
Yeah.
How could you not like that?
I mean, that was fun,
But how about the Bruins, Jimmy? They had that stinky home record for the last 5 or 6 games when they were on that homestand. And then they go out and go into Edmonton and win back-to-back. They get an OT point. Now they've got a day to rest before they play in Vancouver. They're just resilient. They just don't go away.
Yeah.
They just don't go away. But I think you agree. Donnie Sweeney's going to make their team better before the trade deadline.
He is.
He's going to make their team better. What it is, we don't know. You and I have been on the record for a long time, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. If you disagree, say McGuire, shut up. But if they could get Noah Hannafin, they've done their job. The management's done their job. They've done their job. That's all.
I'm with you.
But if they don't get them, they better get somebody that's really good. That's all I'm saying.
And they're going to have to use players. That's the bottom line.
They'll have to use players.
Yeah.
They may have to use a couple of their prospects. They don't have a lot of them, but they may have to use some prospects. They may have to.
That's the big dilemma here. Yeah. Everybody's in love with Poitras, but
I know.
With Noah Hannafin, I love Poitras too. I think he's a great player.
Yes, he is.
But you got to give to get.
You want to get something like that, you got to pay.
Yeah, you got to do a hockey trade. All right, next question. Morant, dear gentlemen, how much of the Laval Rockets do you watch and cover? Are there any observations about their play lately? That goes right to Pierre. He watches a ton.
I watch a ton. I watch all the American Hockey League. I was just with Kevin Dineen, the really smart coach of the Utica Devils. So I watch a lot. I watch Belleville a lot just because I know David Bell, the coach there. I watch Iowa a lot. I mean, I watch most of the teams. Laval had a really bad start, and they're starting to pick it up. And even though they've lost some players up to the NHL team, they've become relevant in terms of a playoff position, which is really exciting for them because at the beginning of the year, it wasn't looking good.
Yeah.
But I think they're doing some good things. Again, I think patience is the key word in Montreal and Laval.
Yep.
And I think they've done that. And Jean-Francois Houle, the coach there, has done a really good job.
I wanted to say that. I don't know much about it, but I watch from afar, and I listen to you talk about it with Mitch Melnick, Pierre. And I remember when everybody was kind of freaking out, like, that team's not doing well. That's not good.
No, they got it back.
He turned it around. He did a great job.
Kelly Buckberger is one of his assistants. He's done a good job. And Daniel Laperriere, Jacques Laperriere's son's the other assistant, Martin. And so there's a lot of good stuff going on there. I think By the way, the crowds.
I was just going to ask you, have you
The
been to a
crowds in
game?
Laval are awesome.
Oh, I got to get
9 to 10,000 every night. It's
Yep.
They're printing money. Let me tell you that. They're
I
printing
gotta
money.
see, you know what? I got to see Pierre. Maybe if they're playing while I'm up there in March, I'll check out a game. I want to go.
I'll take you as my guest.
All right. Sounds like a plan. All right. Another question. We got time for about 3 more. Not a question, but the team at played against sports misses you, Pierre.
You know what? That means a lot to me.
For people that don't know, that's a company in Montreal, right?
Yes, a lot of really good memories in that store with my son when he was starting out in hockey, and yeah,
awesome.
Really appreciative of those folks.
Well, thank you for checking in there. Next question. Mitch Balin, Pierre, did you ever scout native provincials for player before they got some hard hitters at those tournaments?
Well, when I was at St. Lawrence, I used to spend a lot of time it was the Air Canada Cup back then. It's changed so much now, but I spent a lot of time there. You know who one of the players was that I saw playing at the Air Canada Cup was our friend Freddie Harbinson.
Oh, wow.
He played for the Calgary team. That Michael Stewart ended up from that team being a first-round pick of the New York Rangers. He ended up going to Michigan State, but he was on that team with Freddie Harbinson. And so I used to do a lot at different levels. I don't really understand the context of the question, but I used to go. I spent a lot of time in Saskatchewan, a lot of time in Manitoba, a lot of time in Alberta, a lot of time in interior BC, not so much on the coast, but in the interior.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I spent a lot of different places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't.
Johnny Cash song. That's going to be the song.
No, you know what, Jimmy? I got to say, I just love doing it. You know,
I loved when Billy said that too. You know, he said, I just love doing it. It wasn't a job to me.
You know, like that.
That's like I love doing this.
The email from the guys that played against sports meant so much to me just now because even when I go into a hockey sports shop, like those people are trying to grow the game. They care about the people that play. They're so full of expert information. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, like, I get that. And I remember when Ryan was like 2 years old and he was skating. He was actually skating. He was riding a two-wheel bike when he was 2. Because my wife ran over the training wheels on his bike and he figured it out. So and they were such good memories. Like he was one kid, I can just tell you, and I hate to talk about Ryan in public, but he was one kid, like back in those days in Montreal, like the young kids started at like 5 o'clock in the morning on the ice.
Right.
When I come back from road trips, I'd sleep 2 or 3 hours and then I'd say, time to go to hockey. He'd already be up.
Yeah.
He'd be ready to go. Like he wasn't one of those kids you had to like shake him to get him out of bed. He wanted to go. And I watched him at the morning skate today and I was thinking about all the years. It's amazing.
Yeah. It goes by fast, I bet.
It does.
It's going by fast for me. I got my 12-year-old daughter here this weekend. And it's
yeah.
She became 12.
Get it.
All right. Next question. Randy Workman. Jimmy, what do you think of Mark last night? I thought he was fabulous. I mean, the Bruins came, they started slow, but they came on at the end there, and he was big. He had some help from the goalie's best friend a couple times, but he was good. He was good.
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes Patrick Waugh used to kiss those posts. Marc-Andre Fleury does it too. I didn't see Marchand do that, but he's legit. I mean, if you really thought you had a chance to win the cup and you thought goaltending was an issue, and you were prioritizing who you would try to get right now that might be available, Markstrom has to be in the top 2, right? Yeah. Does he?
Yeah.
Like, in your opinion, I think yes.
No, he's right there. He's number 1 on the
market. So
you
have one. I have him in the top 2. And here's it's just a thought because I'm reading out of Minnesota. Like, I don't know what they're going to do with Flower. I don't know what they're going to do. Like, I don't know. But here's what I do know. I've known Marc-Andre unbelievably well since 2002. Like, really well. And I think he's got one more kick left in him. I don't think he's got more than one more kick, but I think he's got one more kick left in him. And it doesn't mean he can run the table in a 4-series Stanley Cup run. But you get that experience and that mentorship and that passion. He might be a cheaper way to make your goaltending position better.
Yep. And I'm looking at you, Colorado Avalanche. That's just my – I think he'd be a great fit there. All right, next question. Last Penn's question.
Yeah. No, Evan. Never
last Penn's question.
Never apologize. Never, ever, ever.
My partner here is always a Penguin. Remember that. Last
Yes.
Penn's question. Matthew Phillips seems scrappy and talented as heck to have made it to this level, but he also seems completely out of his depth. Am I judging too hastily?
No, you're not. They gave him an opportunity, obviously, got an opportunity in Washington as well, a waiver pickup. Um, it's an opportunity. They're trying to keep their roster fluid. I get it. But it just hasn't worked out for Matthew. It doesn't mean he's not a hard worker. It doesn't mean that he can't play in spots in the NHL. But to say that he's an everyday NHLer, Jimmy, I would think that that's a reach.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing, though, too, Pierre, right now, might be better off for him down in the A, just with everything that's kind of going on in Pittsburgh. Maybe it's a better environment. Who knows? All right. Last question here. Vid Zombie, hearing Zach Guy rave the other night about David Savard and how important he is to the young defense. Would you be hesitant to trade him this year?
I would. I've been saying this. I personally would. He's a shot blocker. He's a penalty killer. He's a big body.
Mm-hmm.
He's proud. So not a lot of guys are lining up to come back and play in Montreal. He lined up to come back and play in Montreal. He's a really proud guy. He's a Stanley Cup winner. There's our mentorship again, Jimmy, we talked about with the young defenseman. I'm so happy Arbor saluted that and acknowledged it. And Arbor's a tough cat. He's a tough guy for sure. Jimmy, how about the shot the other day? He hammered that.
Yeah.
He hammered that. So no, I don't know. I would not be in a rush to trade David. I think there'd be teams lining up to pay to get him.
Yeah, for sure. I know we're up against the clock, and I want to continue that because Pierre,
we can do a couple more. Like I just feel bad for the guys.
I would just want to, chime in on that too. Like why? And I think it's more the media that does this. I don't think that as much as the media portrays it, the GMs these days are in such a hurry to get rid of those guys, those vets, even if they're rebuilding. I know it's tempting. You want to get picks, you want to get prospects, what have you, or you got a cap issue. Sometimes you don't have a choice. But Pierre, I starting to see sometimes they just hold on to those guys because they are valuable.
Do you look at? I'm just going to throw one name at you. Most people don't even know he plays in Philadelphia. You don't think Mark Stahls helped the Philadelphia Flyers?
Great call.
You don't think he has? So here's the deal. Sometimes you got to know everything about the player. Mm-hmm. Is Mark as fast as he used to be? No. Is he as strong as he used to be? No. But is his brain better? 100% it is. Who coached him when he broke into New York? John Tortorella. Exactly. You don't think John went to Danny Briere and Keith Jones said, listen, our defense is really young. We're going to have issues here. This guy's going to be an extension of our coaching staff because he can tell the young guys when I'm getting mad at them, calm down. It's okay.
Yep.
I remember Scotty telling me the story. Doug Harvey was in St. Louis, but he was a player coach in Kansas City for their farm team. And Scotty went down to scout one night and he said to Doug, who are your three best players? And Doug said, player A, player B, and me. And Scotty goes, oh, Doug, you're the player coach. You're like 40 years old. He's no, I'm one of the top three guys. So Scotty calls him up for a playoff series against Philadelphia, and they play in the Spectrum. You can go look it up. Uh-huh. He played more minutes than anybody else in the game, Doug Harvey. He ran the game, and St. Louis went to the Stanley Cup final 3 years in a row in their infancy. Wow. But the first one, it was Doug Harvey that helped them get there.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
Those veteran guys are worth their weight in gold. We win 91 and 92 in Pittsburgh. Gordy Roberts was a huge part of it. And Gordy, I hope you're watching. I think the world, and Gordy knows, but
yeah,
I think I told you the story when I went to Scotty. Gordy doesn't have it tonight. Yep. And we were in Chicago in Game 4, and he just laid it. He was dropping F-bombs on me like something else. And I thought at the end of the game, after we won, he was going to come and punch me right in the mouth. And he goes, I apologize. You were right, and I was wrong, and made the right call. Wow. And those guys matter. They matter a lot.
They totally do. And speaking of that team, our man Kevin Stevens just texted me, Pierre. I just saw it now. I wish I saw it when Billy was on, but he said, tell Billy O'Flaherty I say hello. He's one of my favorite people in the game. So there you go.
You know what? Well, Kevin Stevens is one of our favorite people.
We got to get him on too.
Yeah, we think the world of Kevin. And all I can tell you, the Stampeding Elephants, John Cullen, Kevin Stevens, and Mark Recchi, they kept kicking the boards. They didn't think they played enough. Stampeding Elephants on the bench. The option line, all three guys playing out their option. I don't think you'd see that today with those three guys.
No.
No way.
All right, let's do one more here. Mike.
Yes.
Yes, Arbor
Yes.
Jack Eye equals the eye
Yes,
test.
Arbor.
Bingo, Mike. Well
Yes,
said.
Mike. Arbor Jack Eye is the eye test.
Yep.
100%, Mike. That
Love
might
it.
be the comment of the day.
It might. We're gonna do some clips, right? And we're gonna put these in our intro sometime.
Coach O'Flair is a big eye test guy. I know Kevin
Yep.
Stevens is a big eye test guy.
Yeah.
People forget this. Kevin got traded for a guy, I think his name was Anders Hawkinson.
Mm-hmm.
He was traded from Pittsburgh to LA. Kevin was drafted by LA. People forget that.
That's
So
right.
he wasn't drafted by Pittsburgh. He was a trade. And I think
Yeah.
it was Tony Esposito that actually made the trade with Lou Angotti, if I
Wow.
remember correctly. So that he was acquired, but I think the guy's name was Anders Hawkinson, if I remember correctly. And Kevin was amazing player, but it was eye test. Kevin was an eye test player. He wasn't an analytic player. He was an eye test player.
The proud of Silver Lake, Mass. There you go. And a Boston College guy as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking up. You nailed it, Pierre. Traded by the Los Angeles Kings to the Pittsburgh Penguins on September 9th, 1983, in exchange for Anders Hawkinson.
There you go.
There you go.
You know what, Jimmy? I'm glad the synapses are still connected.
Oh, they're there.
Some days are not.
You may not be related to Scotty or Billy, but you got the same vibe, so you're good. All right. Hey, listen, thanks to Billy O'Flaherty for joining us here on the Eye Test. Appreciate it. And reminder too, we'll talk more about it on Monday, but we want to welcome aboard our new sponsors, Factor.
Yes, Factor. Thank you, Factor.
Looking forward to getting that package and tasting their wonderful food. And thanks to our production crew in Montreal. And Pierre, we could say our guest, I think, for Monday.
Yes,
excited.
We're going into the women's hockey world, Jimmy.
That's right.
One of the real bright lights in the coaching front in the Ivy Leagues and all around is the young lady that's coaching at Princeton University. They play a playoff game tomorrow.
There you go.
Tomorrow against Brown University.
Kara
Morey. Correct.
There we go. We will have her on to talk Princeton and some women's college hockey on the Eye Test. And over the weekend, we will formulate another guest list for you. I know you guys are loving the guests, and we love it too. Thanks to you, the viewers and listeners. Pierre, thanks to you. I'm Jimmy Murphy. This has been another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.